Hello and welcome back to the Heart of Amethyst. We will be continuing where we left off with Rodrick. So, I believe last we left Ehlly at the king or princess ball. He was amongst a whole bunch of royals and he ended up meeting a suspicious character by the name of Cardinal Cassian. I believe he has some connection with Rodrick. I don't know what that is. The only thing I remember about their interactions were that the Cardinal is missing an arm and that he's blind. I have a sneaking suspicion that I believe his eye color, which, denotes his magical affinity, is having to do with the same one that Almond has, so like green eyes. So that makes up for the fact that he has non-working eyes, meaning that he can't see you, but he can sense you. Especially because he was aware of Ehlly, and he kind of gave off like a really unsettling vibe for Ehlly, if I recall correctly. I don't really remember what else was being discussed. I believe that depending on the character that you were following, that you would either be dancing or you would be making a fool of yourself, but I think that was in Almond's route. And you would meet Petra, so I think you're dancing in this one? Oh, no, that's Almond. You're eating. So in this one, you're eating, and that's why you meet the Cardinal. So yeah. Really, I don't remember what other stuff there is that was happening, so yeah. I guess without further ado, let us continue Rodrick's route. Upon returning to the Grand Hall, I noticed that most of the crowd had already moved to the front of the room, leaving only a few stragglers behind. Those who remained were still eating or talking with other guests. I felt a surge of curiosity, and not wanting to be left out, I decided to walk alongside the other royals. Some of them seemed nervous, but most of the people present looked rather excited, expectant even. I couldn't help but wonder what the fuss was about. So far, I've been kept in the dark about the political undertone of this event. For me, this was just a birthday party, but I'm sure that for most of these people, this occasion has a deeper meaning. I really don't like it when I'm left out of the loop, but there's really nothing much that I can do. It's partially my fault, though. I was so focused on gathering information about my sister that I forgot to ask about what could be happening here tonight. Oh well, better not to dwell on it. It's not like I can do much about it. Please gather around. His Royal Majesty, Prince Brandon V, is going to give his speech shortly. A butler with a rather tremendous voice announced for everyone to hear. And with that, even the people that had stayed at the back moved to the front of the room. Being distracted as I was, I didn't notice when a strong hand grabbed my wrist, immediately turning me on my feet. Standing just a few feet behind me was a large and stern-looking Ruby. She looked down at me with those red eyes of hers, not smiling but not frowning either. Stoic as always. Ruby? You are required somewhere else. Please follow me. Okay. It's all that I managed to say before she started pulling on my wrist, guiding us around the crowd with ease, as she's taller than most of the other attendants here. There was no need for any pushing though, as they all moved aside, not wanting to interact with us in any way. At first, I thought that was because of my bad reputation, but to my surprise, I'm not the one receiving all the nasty looks. It was Ruby. Some royals were even avoiding the maid, as if she had the plague. Could it be because she's intimidating? No, I don't think that's the case. They didn't seem to be scared of her, mostly disgusted. In any case, she paid them no mind as she traveled the hall towards one of the side corridors. I wondered if she would feel offended if I asked. Although she most likely wouldn't have answered, so I'll have to ignore this burning curiosity and just keep going. After we exited the main hall, we immediately went through a smaller corridor and entered a side door, which leads to an even smaller corridor. She then opened the door, which led me to a room where the other 3 retainers were waiting for me. It was really dark, to say the least. The only light source being a small gap on the door, through which Rodrick was keeping watch. "Good, you're finally here," Rodrick said with a stern voice, not taking his eyes off of the gap. The wolf has his arms crossed, and he was leaning against the doorframe. Meanwhile, Allman seemed to be deep in thought as he looked into the ceiling, and Ehlly quietly read a book. "Did I miss anything?" "Not yet, but almost," Ehlly replied, taking his eyes off of the pages of his book and meeting my gaze soon after. He really looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. "What do you mean?" "King is already at the throne. The birthday speech will start shortly," Rodrick answered in Ehlly's stead, and the younger wolf rolled his eyes at that, resuming his reading. I wished to ask why everyone seemed so on edge, but I felt like that would be a bad idea, as I didn't want to worsen the mood. "Why are we all crammed in here?" "We're the old man's retainers. We need to be close at all times. Especially in these public events, mate." "Have some respect, damn it." "Bite me, old man." The 2 wolves growled at each other, trying to demonstrate dominance over the other. But why here, and not out there? Coming up with a quick question, I tried my best to de-escalate the situation. These 2 really hated each other's guts. "Because the only ones allowed out there are the royal family members," Ehlly responded as he flipped the pages of his book, not even caring to lift his gaze as he spoke. "It's already starting." Back to his usual self, Rodrick said as he opened the door a little wider, increasing the field of view of the outside. I walked closer to him, trying to watch what was going on for myself. The light blinded me for a split second, as the contrast between the room and the outside was quite high. From this angle, I could perfectly see the king, who was sitting on the golden throne. He's accompanied by Princess Dahlia, who was wearing a beautiful emerald dress. Meanwhile, a line of guards was forming a perimeter in front of them, separating the crowd from the royal family. Isn't this supposed to be the prince's party? Because I haven't seen him all night. That's because he's been busy discussing political matters with the king all night. Ehlly answered that question from behind me. It's not often that all the viceroys, cardinals, and the royal family are all together in one single place. One cardinal. The rest of them didn't even bother to show up. Rodrick added to the conversation, but before I could continue asking, we heard a loud cheering boom from outside. People were going haywire out there, and as I checked to see what was causing it, I was met by Prince Brandon V himself. This was my first time ever laying my eyes on the man. He is a big-looking wolf with gray and white fur covering his whole body, with a few spots of dark red showing in some areas of his head and neck. He was muscular, maybe too muscular for a prince, as I could see those bulging muscles even under all the layers of clothing he had on. If you had asked me if he was bigger than Rodrick, I couldn't give you a straight answer. Not that any answer coming from me regarding this topic would be straight at all. Moving on to what he was wearing, the man clearly didn't spare any expense. He was wearing a very regal-looking leather suit, with a white shirt tucked underneath it and a pair of pants tied up with a leather belt. And to top it all off, a beautiful red silk cape, which covered his right arm and combined perfectly with his deep red eyes. Wow. I said to myself, unable to believe how good this man looked. The prince waved and smiled as he made his way towards the throne. Once there, he kneeled in front of the king and then faced the crowd, who eagerly waited for the wolf to speak up. Members of the Canine Kingdom, I welcome you all to my 28th birthday celebration. I'm sure you must have been enjoying the food and the company so far, and I am greatly sorry for making you wait this long. As you must know, dealing with royal business is a tough job." He joked, and the whole room bursted with laughter. I personally didn't find it funny, but I guess I can't. I'm not a royal, and I've never had to deal with royal business, as the prince called it. Brushing that comment aside, I watched closely as the wolf asked the crowd for silence. "Before I start, some acknowledgement is in order, as none of us would be here if it weren't for my grandfather's efforts and support. Thank you kindly for all that you've done, my king." The man bowed, and the crowd politely offered the king a round of applause, to which the old king answered with a smile. Then the prince asked for silence once more. "We all know it's been a difficult year for the kingdom. The constant threat of barbarians looming over our eastern border. The frailty of the peace treaty with the birds in our northern border. And the increase of crime, delinquency, and piracy within our own territory. I'm sure all of that has led us to be scared for our lives and fearful of the kingdom's stability. But I assure you, my friends, the viceroys, the royal family, and the church are working their hardest to maintain order. Every problem shall be dealt with in due time. That I promise you tonight." The crowd clapped even harder this time, making the prince's grin grow even wider. It seemed like he was really enjoying basking in all this attention. Now, before we continue to enjoy ourselves, there were a couple of announcements that I must share with all of you. I could feel the crowd holding their breaths. Everyone seemed on edge, hungry for any sort of information the prince could give to them. First and foremost, I am extremely happy to announce that my dear wife has been blessed with our firstborn. The royals clapped for the third time at this point. I wondered if their hands were getting itchy. Thank you, you're all very kind. Sadly, my wife is still very weak from birth and couldn't make it to today's celebration, but she sends her regards. We are both very happy. Our son Johannes I was blessed with great health and was born without any setbacks. We will make sure to raise him properly so that he can one day become a great king. Just like his great-grandfather, his great-uncle, and all previous kings that came before them. Everyone seemed really happy about the prince's announcement, all of them clapping their hearts out. Now, carrying on with the rest of the announcements, I would kindly ask Lady Petra to take the stance. That's when the prince stepped aside and a scrawny-looking woman took the stage in his stead. As the prince did that, I could see the wolf lady I met before taking his place. Ehlly's cousin. She seemed rather nervous to be in front of so many people, and I honestly couldn't blame her. It has to be nerve-wracking to be up there. Thank you, Your Majesty. People of the Canine Kingdom, I'm here to present you with the latest discovery in investigating about the minerals' qualities and their potential uses. I know many of you think that this is not important, but this is a discovery of the century. I assure you. So please, settle down. Once she said that, the girl started her explanation. To be honest, I disconnected after a while, as she proceeded to explain a lot of scientific details about the different types of minerals and their influence in magic. Luckily, the prince decided to intervene after 10 minutes of babbling. Dear Lady Petra, I'm sure that we will all read your paper once it's published, but if you could you get to the point? Ah, yes, sorry, Your Majesty. As I was saying, the main problem with quartz, it's the fact that they merely reflect magic. They can't store it or amplify it. Well, until now. I have modified a mineral into being capable of doing both of those things. Allow me to present to you the Amethyst fragmented crystal. As she said that, she took an amethyst crystal out of her dress and presented it to the public. I could barely see it from here, but I noticed that the crystal was shaped like a pendulum, and it was shining brightly. It wasn't that big, but it was big enough to cover most of the palm of her hand. The crystal by its own is worthless, actually one of the cheapest gifts you can get in the market. But when it's cut at a certain specific angles and exposed to some particular conditions, it becomes magically inclined. She seemed to be getting more and more excited by the passing second, It was like seeing a child showing off her new toys to her peers. "Now, Your Majesty, would you allow me to demonstrate?" The girl turned to the old king, and the man nodded, which made her visually light up with glee. "Prince Brandon, you are a red-eyed wolf, am I correct?" Yes, you are correct." The younger wolf looked confused at her question, raising an eyebrow at the lady. In any case, she didn't seem to pay that any mind as she carried on. "Now, could you hold this for me, please?" She handed him the amethyst pendulum-shaped crystal, and the prince cautiously grabbed it. "If you may, could you point it towards the ceiling, please?" He did as he was told, cautiously walking a little further ahead from where the king and the princess were. Meanwhile, Lady Petra was smiling from cheek to cheek. "Now, apply enough force to break it. It shouldn't be too hard." "You want me to break it?" "Yes, please." "Don't worry, I have made hundreds of those." Very well." Like... Before anyone could even acknowledge what was happening, a bolt of lightning tore through the room and landed itself on the ceiling, damaging part of the art. Everyone gasped and screamed at this event, unable to comprehend what just happened. All the guests were in a state of shock, and that included the prince himself, who dropped the crystal to the ground as if it had burned him. Meanwhile, the guards were trying their best to keep everyone calm, but people seemed uneasy. "Please, everyone, remain calm. Everything is under control," Petra said with the biggest grin on her face. "As you can see, even the prince, who is a red-eyed individual, has managed to do elemental magic. I want you all to imagine the hundreds of uses that we could give to these crystals. The possibilities are endless." She acted like a mad scientist, and everyone was more wary than impressed at this point. Yes, thank you for such a unique display." The prince coughed as he tried to compose himself. He still seemed a little freaked out, but he was trying to play it off cool for the sake of the party. "Here it is, everyone, the future of the kingdom. Thank you so much, Lady Petra." At first, the guests appeared to be unsure to clap or not, but eventually they budged and clapped anyway. Petra smiled at the crowd and then walked away from the throne. "I can't believe she actually made it." I heard Ehlly speaking from behind me, so I turned around to meet his gaze, but he was lost in his own thoughts. There was a mixture of anxiety and worry spread all over his face. It's not often that Ehlly shows his emotions, so seeing him like this was making me feel a little uneasy. Before I could comfort him, though, Rodrick turned around and spoke to me. "Speech is over. Let's go." "Where?" "The king wishes to talk to you. Come, I'll take you to him." For a moment, I was unsure of what to do. I kind of wanted to stay and make sure Ehlly was okay, but at the same time, I felt like this was probably important. I mean, the king requested my presence. It's not like I could turn him down. So deciding to leave that talk with Ehlly for later, I exited the door, following Rodrick closely. I really hope that he'll be okay. Back at the main hall, I noticed that most guests had gone back to dancing or talking, not paying much mind to the king and his grandson, who were still lingering by the throne. "I still don't understand why you don't let me announce it." The conversation between the two seemed heated. But, like always, the king acted calm, contrary to Prince Brandon, who seemed to be on the verge of an anger fit. "What must I do?" The king asked him to stop as he saw us approaching, forcing the prince to change his tone and his face. The old man gave both Rodrick and myself a small nod of acknowledgement, and so did the prince. "Brandon, I want you to meet Sir Ehlly." "Sir Ehlly, this is my grandson and heir apparent to the throne of the Canine Kingdom, Brandon the Fifth." Brandon bowed respectfully, and I imitated him, lowering my head as a sign of politeness. "You've got quite the reputation, Sir Ehlly. It is a pleasure to finally meet you." He's got a very kind and warm smile, and I couldn't help but blush a little as he kept staring at me. "Likewise, sir. It's, pleasure. Anything else that I can do for you, my lord? No, Sir Rodrick. You're free to enjoy the party. Rodrick bowed and then looked me in the eye one last time before leaving our side. I wonder what was that about. He seemed worried for some reason. Although worrying about Rodrick was the least of my problems. Because now I am left here with the two most important people of the entire canine kingdom, and I have no fucking clue of what to do or say. Great. Luckily, I didn't have to come up with any icebreakers, as it was Brandon who shattered the awkward silence. So, Sir Ehlly, my grandfather has told me you grew up in the lower city? Yes, sir. That's correct. Impressive. Looking at you now, I wouldn't have even guessed it. Except for your accent, perhaps. The man chuckled, and I tried to grin, but soon decided not to, as I didn't want to look awkward. And he has made some outstanding advances in his swordsmanship. He came toe-to-toe with a trained knight in a practice match. Did he now? I wish that I could have seen it. Well, it feels good to be praised for something that you actually feel proud about. I tried my best in that match, and I ended up winning fair and square. In any case, let me bore you no longer with my mindless talk. There is something really important that we must discuss, and it concerns the both of you. Suddenly the king's face turns serious, and he adjusted himself properly on the throne. I could feel myself getting tense, but so did the prince. It is no mystery that I am not getting any younger. My time in this world and my time as the king are coming to an end, and as much as I don't want to admit it, it's time for me to take a break. Brandon, you are an outstanding member of our family, and you have fulfilled most of my expectations. I certainly could not have asked for a better grandson. I am really proud of you. My king, please, don't talk as if you'll die tomorrow. You still have your best years ahead of you. The king laughed, and I saw the prince visibly relax beside me. How I wish that were true, my boy. But age does not forgive, and I have come to a decision regarding your coronation. Brandon tried to hide his excitement, but I noticed a slight wag of his tail. As amazing as you are, my boy, I must admit that I have cuddled you too much, and in doing so, it has prevented you from truly understanding the needs of our people. That's the main reason why I still hold onto the throne, and hence, why I didn't allow you to make the announcement yet. So, in order to help you understand the lower class better, I have decided to appoint Sir Ehlly as your royal advisor. At that exact same moment, both my jaw and the princess dropped to the ground. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Me, a personal advisor to the future king? That was madness. I hardly knew anything about politics, and I hardly knew anything about advising. It seemed like the prince shared my sentiment, because not a second after those words had left the king's mouth, he started to protest. Grandpa, please, I beg you to reconsider. Sir Ehlly shows great potential, yes, but to put him in such an important role is insane. As much as I wanted to feel insulted by his comment, I couldn't agree more. I was doomed to fail from the start. What was this man thinking? Yes, of course, I agree with you. Sir Ehlly is still unexperienced and immature. And that is why, starting next week, you two will be in a trial period, which will last a year. Depending on how you do, I will either extend or reduce this trial. Once it's done, I assure you the crown will finally be yours. The prince closed his mouth shut and looked away, gripping his fist so hard that I thought that he was going to draw blood. And Sir Ehlly. The king turned to me, his typical smile being present. I know that this is a surprise, and there is no way to prepare you for such a task, but I humbly ask that you accept it. I truly believe you are a ray of hope sent to us by the goddesses, and you would be doing this kingdom a great service. The stare of both the king and the prince froze me in place, making it impossible for me to process the severity of the situation, and even worse, to form a single sentence. So there I was, stuck in place like an idiot, with two of the most important figures in the entire kingdom staring daggers at me. This is too much. Get acquainted with the idea through the week. And that goes for the both of you. By the time that I go back to Rose Island in 7 days, we will reach a decision. Grandpa, please. And that is final. He shut the prince up in a matter of seconds. It's honestly impressive how such a tiny man is capable of controlling such a big individual. The power of the crown in all its glory, I suppose. It's like those power bottom situations, but in this case, it would be really weird and extremely creepy. Not to mention disturbing and disgusting. Actually, how about you two spend the rest of the evening together? I'm sure that you have lots of things to discuss. Brandon and I exchanged glances, then we turned to the king and nodded. Of course, as you order, your majesty. Yes, of course, sir. Splendid. Off you go, then. And with that, he hushed us off towards the party. The prince and I didn't speak at all while we were together. Not because of a lack of opportunities to do so, on the contrary, there were so many chances for us to indulge in conversation as we were left to our own devices. But I was honestly too nervous and I didn't know how to approach our situation. And I'm sure that he got a lot on his mind too. So we decided to spend most of our night in silence, with only the occasional guest who would come around and ignite a conversation with His Highness. He didn't seem to enjoy much of the company of the other royals, though. I noticed that he felt uncomfortable when they approached him. The fur at the end of his tail raised up, his lips turned to form a fake smile and his eyes twitched for a few seconds. These were such minor details, but they made me wonder if he was always this. Socially awkward. Not that I was criticizing him or anything. If nothing, this made me like him more, because it meant that we had something in common. Or maybe I was just jumping to conclusions, and he was merely on the edge. Or maybe he was just jumping to conclusions, and he was merely on edge after what the king said. I mean, I would be too if all of a sudden my fate depended on a total stranger that came out of nowhere. Honestly, what is that old man thinking? Has he gone completely senile? I really wouldn't even know what to do as a royal advisor. Like, they're the ones that keep the kings from making terrible mistakes, right? Do I really look like someone with enough common sense to fulfill that role? I almost blasted the king of the king and kingdom to pieces not that long ago. Clearly making good decisions is not my strong suit. Oh goddesses, and I thought being a retainer was already too much pressure. Hopefully the king will reconsider. But what if he doesn't? Should I turn it down? Am I even allowed to do so? He told me to think about it, but it honestly felt like I didn't have much of a choice. I was trapped in the king's game again. He did it once when he appointed me as his retainer, and he was doing it again. I sighed deeply, making the prince turn my way. Not wanting to bother him, I offered an apologetic smile, but his eyebrow raised nonetheless. I see you are as distracted as I am. Forgive me for ignoring you. I've just had a lot on my mind. Wow, I wasn't expecting this type of treatment. He was the polar opposite of his cousin. No, please, don't apologize, Your Highness. If nothing, I should apologize instead. I'm the one standing between you and the crown. The man squinted his eyes, probably analyzing what I just said. You're planning to accept? I don't have much of a choice, do I? I'm supposed to follow his orders. I suppose so. He added nothing else, his words carrying a bit of disgust hidden amongst indifference. I felt like I needed to tell him something. Because if I don't, he's going to think that I'm doing this on purpose, and that's not it at all. Your Highness, what do you think would happen if I say no? I don't want this spot as much as you don't want me to take it. The prince scoffed at my comment and then turned his gaze towards the throne, where currently no one was sitting. Hard to say. My grandfather has always been a complex man. He enjoys plotting silly games like this one, and when they don't work, he plots the next. I could kindly ask you not to take this spot, but then he would find another reason to not make me king. And then another, and another. It must be very frustrating. You have no idea. As he felt silent, I thought the conversation was about to end again, but to my surprise, he continued talking. I've lived my entire life preparing for this role. Ever since I was little, I was told that I was the only heir to the crown. Can't imagine what kind of pressure that would do to a kid. It was rough at times, but I got used to the idea and it eventually became my dream. I wouldn't change it for anything. I felt a strong surge of sympathy running through my body. I can't say that I've been in this position, but I kind of understand what he's going through, as I know what it felt like to have your dreams snatched from you over and over again. Each time that I had a lead on my sister, I would end up on a dead end. Just like him with a crown. I guess you can say that I relate to him, at least to some extent. At that point in our conversation, I really wanted to tell him something to make him feel better, but as I was about to open my mouth, we were interrupted by the arrival of another guest. Ah, the energy of youth is certainly something. Both of your auras sparkle like stars. My mind rushed as I recognized that voice. It was Cardinal Cassian. What an honor to see you again. Enjoying the party? Quite. For an old man, the goddesses have blessed me with a strong stomach. The old coyote bowed his head at the prince, and then he grinned as he acknowledged me, doing a little bow as well. Sir Anthony, what a pleasure to meet you again. Anthony? The prince raised his eyebrow as he turned his attention towards me. That's my second name, Your Highness. I introduce myself to strangers like that. I got the feeling that he didn't buy it entirely, but luckily for me, he decided not to press any further. To what do I owe this pleasure, my good man? Is there anything else that you need to say to me? The prince spoke with his regular, princely voice. He was completely different, man, from the person that I was talking to seconds ago. He changed from the sweet and vulnerable to strong and stoic. Almost like he put on a mask. No need to be so formal, my good friend. I'm just here to chat. The man said with a kind smile, rubbing the top of his belly. I took a glance at the coyote as I felt a shiver running down my spine. He was not facing my way or even talking to me, but for some reason I had the vague hunch that the man's attention was on me and not the prince. Unless I'm interrupting something. No, don't worry about it. Sir Ehlly and I were merely chatting, right? Yeah, don't worry about it, sir. Ah, good. I'm glad my presence isn't causing any discomfort. The cardinal announced happily, making the prince and I share a look of understanding, as we agreed to leave the result of our previous conversation to be discussed at a later time. First of all, I must congratulate you about the baby, sir. Life is always a blessing. I cannot imagine how much glee you must be experiencing right now. Yes, quite. We had been trying for years. It almost felt like the goddesses didn't plan for us to have an heir. Thankfully, it seems like they have changed their mind. My lord, the goddesses never change their minds. If they blessed you with a son now, and not before, it's because it was probably not the right time. Yes, of course. Silly me. The prince forced a smile, and I couldn't help but notice that this one seemed more fake than all the previous ones, as if he was actively trying not to show any real emotion. It made me wonder if something the cardinal had said struck him the wrong way. By the way, my lord, how was Lady Rose faring? I heard it was a difficult delivery. Really? But that's not what... Oh, never mind. He probably said that with the intention of pacifying the expectations of the other royals. Damn, that's smart. It makes sense, though. If someone has to keep things under control, that would be the royal family. I see your sources are very well informed. The cardinal just smiled, not admitting to anything and not showing any signs of remorse. To ease your worries, she'll live. but the healer said that she would most likely not be capable of birthing another baby. Oh gosh, that's terrible. It's what I would have said if I wasn't struck in place, too scared to interrupt their conversation. Almost like a little kid not wanting to interrupt mommy and daddy when they're talking. Thank the goddesses, they blessed you with a male heir then. Yet another proof of their holy mercy. If that was their mercy, I didn't want to imagine what their wrath was like. Gosh, that's messed up. Yes, the royal line is thin enough as it is, almost as if it's been cursed, don't you think? Silence set, the prince spared me a quick glance and then looked at the cardinal with a blank expression. The cardinal, on the other hand, seemed surprised but quickly hid the fact behind a grin. Nonsense, my lord. It's just been a couple of hard years. I'm sure everything will be better from now on. The goddesses would never abandon their favorite children. The cardinal offered the prince a reassuring smile as he patted his belly with his only available hand. Let's hope that you are right. As the conversation was about to die, the cardinal decided to open his mouth once more. By the way, my lord, have your grandfather and yourself given the church's proposal any thought? That piqued my curiosity as I didn't know that the royal family had any close deals with the church. Although, to be fair, there are many other things that I don't know. The king insisted on not letting her go, and I must abide by his choice, although if you wish to do something about it, it's up to you. For the time being, that's all that I can do. Very well, I shall request an audience with the king in the near future to discuss it personally with them. The prince didn't respond to that, he just looked to the side and nodded. I also took a glance in that direction but couldn't notice anything in particular. Was he looking at someone among the crowd? If you'll excuse me, I have some important matters that cannot wait. Have a good night, gentlemen. He said that out of the blue, offering a small polite nod at the both of us as he walked away. With the prince no longer here, I really didn't want to stay nearby this old man. So I tried to sneak away, but before I could, he shifted his attention towards me. Quite the character, wouldn't you agree? Damn, so close. I really didn't want to be there. But I decided against being rude, so I answered him. Yeah, sure is. The goddesses work in mysterious ways. I raised my eyebrow at those cryptic words, but it wasn't like he could have seen that. Also, the fact that he wasn't directly looking at me was really off-putting. I would never get used to that. In any case, please don't let me keep you from this beautiful party. It was a pleasure speaking with you, Sir Anthony. The cardinal chuckled lightly as he slowly walked away from me, quickly getting lost amongst the rest of the guests. That uncomfortable ache in my throat didn't leave with him, though, as I was now sure that there was something going on behind the curtains between the royal family and the church. It made me feel uneasy to think about all the political drama that I was getting myself in, but I guess this is what I signed up for. Or what my hand was forced to sign. Either way, I could really use a drink right now. After a few hours passed by, I started to feel really overwhelmed. The amount of people, the loud noises, the music, and the alcohol. It was too much for little old me. So I decided that the best thing that I could do was to step out for a few minutes and take a break. I gazed at the sky and noticed how low the moon was already on the horizon. It must be way past noon already, so it wouldn't surprise me if I see the sun rising anytime soon. Goddesses, I really wish that I could be laying on my comfortable bed right now. I said to myself as I strolled through the empty castle hallways without any destination in mind. From where I was, I could still see the party. Everyone seemed happy, or at least they pretended to be. The young royals were dancing to their heart's content. The older guests talked and made strategic connections amongst themselves. And the ladies laughed at their lords' jokes or danced amongst them. All of them performed brilliantly at the game, knowing their places and measuring their actions. Everyone except for one person. My eyes landed on her as they trailed around the castle's facade. Princess Dahlia, who often acted all high and mighty, was at the time behaving not at all princessly. She was by the other side of the garden, laying on top of the fence with her arms tucked around her head. Had she been crying? I couldn't tell from where I was standing. Or perhaps she was feeling a little tipsy, although I never saw her drinking a single glass of wine. In any case, all I knew with certainty was that the girl was not interacting with anyone, nor was she even trying to be social. And that was not a usual behavior in these kind of events. Curiosity started to eat me alive, so I decided to approach her slowly, not wanting to startle her. I personally wasn't the biggest fan of Princess Dahlia, but I did love the gossip. As I got closer, I could hear the unmistakable sound of crying. Being a few feet away from her, it was time to make a decision. I could go and try to comfort her, but in reality, I wouldn't know what to say and I could make things worse. Or I could just leave her alone, although she is clearly distressed and in need of comfort. So, I will. Ask her if she's fine. I may not like her much, but I'm not heartless enough to just leave. Besides, even if I probably wouldn't give her life-changing advice, the least that I could do is be there for her, just keeping her company. That's what I would like if I were in the same situation. So with that in mind, I decided to move closer to her. I gave her enough space so she wouldn't feel uncomfortable, but I was close enough for her to notice me. I touched her shoulder with my hand as a sign of comfort and understanding. As expected at first, she didn't even acknowledge my existence, but after a few long and excruciating seconds, she grunted. "What do you want, Ehlly?" "Nothing really. I just wanted to make sure that you were all right." "I am, so leave me be." "Okay, Ehlly, deep breaths. This is to be expected, and you decided to stick your nose in her business. And as Mom used to say, patience is a virtue. Did something happen? Did someone tell you something mean, or perhaps... What part of leave me be don't you understand?" The princess's voice cracked as she raised it to me, keeping her head buried in her arms. She probably didn't want me to see her crying. And her makeup is most likely a mess. I'm just... trying to help. "Well, you can't, okay? No one can." "I could try to understand." "As if. You have it easy. You were born with the fucking..." That shut me up for good. I've never seen her so upset, nor have I ever heard her using that kind of language. For some reason, it just felt different when someone like her used it. I mean, I always thought that she was this perfect little princess that was only a little bratty from time to time. But I guess that was wrong on its own. I shouldn't have made assumptions. Sorry. That's all that I managed to say, hoping that it would make her feel better to some extent. But it didn't, as she started to cry even louder. Oh fuck, what do I do? And what does she mean with that comment? No, I should not focus on that. I need to focus on getting her to trust me. Somehow. When I was a kid, I used to keep a diary to write my problems. Instead of talking it out with my adoptive parent, I wrote them down. I did it because I didn't want to seem ungrateful to them. I wanted them to believe that I was a little happy little boy. After all, they were the ones who took care of me. But one day, as my adoptive mom was sweeping through my room, she found it. I thought that she was going to be so mad at me. I had written some very nasty comments in there. Instead, she hugged me. She told me to never keep secrets like that from her, and that if I was feeling bad, she would be there to listen. Needless to say, I stopped writing in my diary soon after. The princess didn't say anything throughout the whole story, and I didn't know what to make of that. Maybe she was ignoring me, but I didn't want to believe that she was. So I would take her silence as my cue to keep going. She wasn't born as a man, but she was there. And that was more than enough for me. I'm not trying to pretend that I will understand what you feel like. No one could. But I don't have to be your enemy either. It doesn't matter. We're both people, and that should be more than enough for me to be able to sympathize with you. Don't you think? As I finished my speech, I heard her release a long and deep sigh, followed by a sad chuckle. You're an idiot, she said before falling back into silence. I smiled at that and then kept looking at her. At least she's not crying now. It's progress. We remained like that for a long time, none of us saying a thing or making a sound. I decided that it was okay after all. I just wanted to keep her company. So when she made the first move to talk, I let her. You really want to know? Only if you feel like telling me. Okay. You probably know this, but there has never been a female heir to the throne. It's customary for the first male born to inherit the crown. It's been that way even before the time of Andreas. Yeah, I'm aware. Well, you should also be aware that the princesses must serve a role to the family as well. What do you mean? She looked away from me, towards the moon. I could finally see the stains from the makeup covering her cheeks. It was indeed a mess. When my father died, he was going to a political meeting in Colombia. I was only 1 year old, and yet... Her eyes started to water once more, but looking at her, she didn't look sad. She was upset. So I remained quiet. I didn't want to fuck it up by saying the wrong thing. He was going to promise my hand in marriage. He was going to sell me like cattle to a cardinal. His own daughter. How could he? Gosh, I can't even imagine how she must be feeling. I was spared for a few years. With my grandfather on the throne, he kept me safe in Rose Island, away from the public eye. This was the first time that I've been here since I was a baby. I'm sure the king will keep protecting you. I tried to cheer her up, but she didn't seem any happier by my words. He will. For a few months that he's got left on the throne. Oh, right. Brandon and I barely know each other, and I'm sure that he won't doubt for a second to hand me to them. Especially if it will score him an alliance with the church. After that, we both remained quiet. I got closer to her and placed my hand on her shoulder again, and she allowed me to. I couldn't believe her own family was doing this to her. It's just awful. I met with him tonight. Who? My alleged fiancé. Cardinal Cassian. Cassian? I almost choked on the words as I couldn't believe my ears. He was her fucking fiancé? That armless old man? No wonder she was crying. And, what did he tell you? Nothing much. He just introduced himself and then... Well, I guess you can figure out what we talked about. The marriage? She nodded, and I could hardly believe her. What a terrible experience that must have been. He proposed to me in front of everyone. Really? That slimy old man? I was about to ask her what happened next when... Dahlia, darling, the king wants to see you. None of us saw her or even heard her approaching, but Ruby sneaked up on us and almost scared the crap out of me. Oh, goddesses, I can't go looking like this. I'm a mess. You are indeed, darling. Come on, I'll escort you to the bathroom. Follow me. Ruby let Dahlia go past her in another hall, away from the party. Before she left, though, she turned back and offered me one last shy smile. Once the princess was gone, the maid turned her attention towards me, looking into my eyes with those red ones of hers. Then she said, "Thank you." For being there. She needed someone to talk to, and I've never been good with words. Now, if you'll excuse me. As the maid had nothing left to say, She soon followed Dahlia back into the building. I took a last glance at the stars and then sighed. Man, I really earned a good night's sleep. Chapter 4: Before the Storm. Darkness enveloped my whole consciousness. Once more, I found myself in a pool of nothingness with no physical body to call my own. I could hear many voices all over the void, whispering to me, calling me, taunting me. I couldn't help but wonder if any of this was real, or if it was just my fucked up brain playing tricks to me in my sleep. As of late, I've been able to retain more and more details about these dreams of mine. Each time, the voice in my head keeps getting louder and louder, but before it can reach me, I wake up. It scared me to think that this time it would actually catch me, but it never does. Even so, every fiber of my being was on high alert, ready for whatever had to happen. Come to pay me a visit, yet again? Always the goody two-shoes, aren't you? Tell me, what will you accomplish in life if you only think about others? Isn't being selfish a part of a mortal's nature? What do you want from me? As I asked that, the eerie voice laughed maniacally, which caused a stinging pain to spread throughout my entire being. Shut up, shut up! Please stop! I pleaded, but nothing happened. The pain never ceased and the taunting continued. Wave after wave of excruciating pain rushed through me. I couldn't tell what was happening anymore, and I'm sure that if I had a body, it would be revolting and thrashing around. How is this possible? Why am I feeling this much pain in a dream? You are a fool. Nothing but a pawn in a much bigger game. Just then, when I was on the brink of madness, a white light shined right over the void, turning all the darkness into something more pure and soothing. I no longer felt pain, and the aches of my soul felt meaningless. As my consciousness started to fade, the last thing that I saw was a silhouette of... Mom? I woke up in a cold sweat. I was drenched in it, actually. My palms were shaky, and the tears would not stop running down my cheeks. What the actual fuck was that? I've never had such a vivid dream before. What I felt, what I saw. Was any of that real? Man, what is wrong with me lately? I rubbed my temples, trying to catch my bearings. The room was very dark, with the only thing illuminating it being the dim light of dawn coming through the window. Man, I've only been within the walls of this castle for 2 days, and so far, I've had 2 of these horrible nightmares. I can barely sleep anymore. I don't think that I'll last another 5 days. We have to stay here if things don't change. I look down at my pillow, covered in my sweat, and I cringe at the thought of going back to sleep. Maybe I could find something to entertain myself with. A bath is always an option, I suppose. Yeah. Let's do that. After one long and very relaxing bath, I decide to wander around the halls of the castle. Eventually, the mindless walking took me to a stone bench under a tree in the castle's gardens. I yawned, feeling the lack of sleep finally getting the upper hand of me. Goddesses, was I sleepy. Sleepy and unoccupied. Even so, I really didn't want to go back to bed, as that dream shook me to my core. So I tried to come up with a plan to entertain myself. And after a few minutes of thinking, I decided that the best option would be to... And because this is Rodrick's route, we will be working out by the training grounds because that's how you get to talk to Rodrick. So if you haven't seen the Almond videos or the Icalis ones, this one is for Almond and this one is for Icalis. You get to see either of those in their respective videos, which should be releasing at the same time, I think. Anyway, so yeah, Rodrick. You know what? It's been ages since I last trained. It felt like forever since I had that duel with Eddie, and I didn't want to get rusty. Besides, what better place to train than that Royal Castle barracks? I'm sure that the exercise will help me keep my mind off of things. Between the dreams and the stress of the looming position as a royal advisor, I've been feeling like my head is going to explode. It's time to take these puppies for a walk, I said to myself, referring to my muscles, which have increased in mass since I started training with the sword. So, not wanting to delay any further, I stood up from the bench and walked off towards the barracks training ground. Once I made it there, though, I was not expecting to see so many people. At least 100 men were either sparring or using dummies as their partners. Some of them were using wooden swords, but most of the men were actually practicing with real steel. Gosh, I hope it's edgeless steel, or else an accident is bound to happen. And yes, in case you were wondering, most of them were shirtless, so there's no lack of eye candy. In any case, I tried to stay out of their way as possible. I wandered around the field trying to see if there were any extra wooden swords for me to train with, but so far no luck. Actually, some of them were still practicing with their fists, so I'm guessing that there must be no spars. Defeated, I sighed and leaned against one of the surrounding trees. I just bent my head backwards and closed my eyes. I was starting to feel very sleepy, but the sound of clashing steel and manly grunts was somehow relaxing. So before I could notice, I dozed off. Hey. Was someone there? Why you here? Please leave me be. I really need this. Wake up, grunt. A kick woke me up from my slumber, and I knew damn well who it was. You know, according to the fairy tale, you have to kiss the princess to wake her up, not kick her in the ass. You're not a princess, and I am not kissing you. And I told you to read a better book. Now care to explain what the fuck you're doing here? I noticed a few soldiers gazing our way. Mostly curious looks who didn't know who I was and why I wasn't training. However, they soon looked away as they noticed Rodrick was involved in the matter. Well, I was thinking about training for a bit. Don't want to get rusty and all. But no spare swords, so I just took a nap. Rodrick looked back at the men and then back at me. Then he sighed. Suppose you're right, but who says that you can only train with a sword? Come, follow me, runt. The wolf led me to the side of the field where no one was currently training. As I followed him, I finally noticed how dirty the knight was. His hair was a complete mess, his fur was unkempt, and he was sweating buckets. All signs that he'd been training for a while. When did the training start? In the morning. You were asked to lead the recruits? Yes. Why so cranky? I teased and he raised an eyebrow with an exasperated expression. Because they drive me nuts, just like you. Now get ready. I added and then took off my own shirt, getting in stance, as I had done so many times in our past training sessions. So, what are we doing? Wrestling. Know how it goes? Not really, no. Why am I not surprised? I just shrugged at his comment and then he sighed heavily in response. Look, it's simple. The goal is to pin your opponent to the ground, and whoever does it for 10 consecutive seconds is the victor. And you expected me, a young small fox, to pin you down? Look, size and strength are not everything. Besides, I'll go easy on you, so stop complaining. Well, he's got a point there. He's been rough in our training sessions, but never to an extreme point. What the heck. Let's give it a try and sweat a little. Alright, here I go. Good. Come at me. I took a deep breath before launching myself forward with as much strength as I could. Say whatever you want about Rodrick, but his strict training regimen has boosted both my strength and my resistance by a mile. That said, clashing against this man was like running into a brick wall. Nothing can move him. Sloppy. If you're going to tackle someone, do it with your head up and your legs steady. Or else. With a swift move, Rodrick tripped me with his leg, and before I could understand what was happening, I was flying over my head. I hit the ground like a potato sack, and the pain came soon after. I hissed at it and gritted my teeth. Son of a... See what I mean? He said with a smug grin plastered all over his handsome face. Gosh, even when he's being an asshole, he's gorgeous. You call that going easy? Man up, runt. One hit shouldn't be enough to put you down. Now get up. We're not half done yet. I knew there was no talking him out of this, so I did as he said and got up. Some bones cracked, but I guess I was all right. Remember what I told you. Steady. Uh-huh. With a grunt and a swear, I threw myself back at him. This time I managed to struggle for a little longer, keeping myself in place. I knew for a fact that he could have gotten rid of me if he wanted to, but he noticed the improvement in my form and decided to hold himself back even more. Good. Now kick my leg and try to trip me over your shoulder. You crazy? You weigh over 250 pounds, man. I told you wrestling is not about strength. The heavier your opponents are, the harder they'll hit the ground. You just need to find the right angle and use your opponent's strength against them. Okay. Just tell me what to do. Put your dominant leg behind mine and use it as a hook, then pull. Once you notice I lost my balance, you lean backwards a little and you take me with you. Gravity will do the rest if you've done it right. Won't be easy, but at least try. I tried to do as he said, but it was of no use. The wolf wasn't moving an inch. Pretty sure my face was getting red as tomatoes from all of the effort that I was putting into trying to move the man. It was ridiculous. Okay. Maybe strength plays a major role. Fuck you, man. It was a good try, runt. Anyway, let's go again, but this time try to use whatever means necessary. You sure? Yeah, just come at me with everything you've got. Well, here goes nothing, I suppose. I took a deep breath and got into stance again. I'm pretty sure clashing with him is not the smartest idea, so I need to come up with a creative way to bring this titan down. As I was trying to come up with a plan, the wolf dashed towards me. Both of his hands tried to grab me like before, but luckily I dodged them and got out of the way in time. He immediately retaliated by punching me with the back of his hand right on the snout. It didn't hurt much, but it gave him a big enough opening to jump me and pin me to the ground. Before I could do anything, I had a huge, smelly, sweaty wolf on top of me. With just one of his hands, he grabbed both of my own and held them together, while using the other one to grab my neck gently. Good reflexes, but we still got a lot of work to do. Never stood a chance. No, you did. Stop thinking like that, damn it. But No, Grunt, you need to stop selling yourself short. That's the problem with your mentality. Why didn't you ask to join the training? You had every right to do it, but instead you just went to the tree and dozed off. You know how weak that made you look? They were laughing at you. And it pissed me off. I didn't think about that. Course you didn't. That's my point. You gotta start making people respect you, and to do that, you need to respect yourself first. I swear I was trying to pay attention to his pep talk, but the wolf was really close to me, and it was getting to my head. So close that I could feel his warm, rapid breathing hitting against my face, and I could smell his musky scent very clearly. Gosh, it was strong. Oh no, Eli, Jr., don't do it. It's not a good time to... Get up. It's enough for now. The wolf lets go of me, setting himself back up to his feet. Me, on the other hand, stayed on the floor as I tried to compose myself. Oh, come on. You barely have a scratch. Just let me catch my breath, okay? I'll be with you in a second. I turned to my side, not wanting the whole class to see the growing boner that I had at the moment. It took me just a few seconds, but under his gaze, it felt like an eternity. What was I thinking, getting all riled up like that? I need to get a hold of myself. Besides, I'm afraid of what the knight would do if he found out that I am. You know, for not being a red-eye, you've gotten pretty tough in the last few months. The wolf said, getting me out of my head. Then he offered me his hand, and when I took it, he boosted me up with ease. Pretty impressive how fast you adapt. What does that mean? Why would the color of my eyes matter? Ehlly didn't explain it to you. He explained it a bit, but I didn't fully grasp it. Mind giving me a quick rundown? Well, I don't know much about the other uses of mana. Then just explain the red eye's magic? Ugh, fine. He rolled his eyes, trying to act as if this was much of a bother, but I know deep down that he enjoyed teaching. Physical mana is the easiest to understand, or at least that's what the scholars say. It's a type of magic used to enhance one's bodies to its limit. So instead of punching me hard, you punch me very hard? Yeah? It's not only that. Yes, your muscle mass increases, and with that, your raw strength. But it also enhances your stamina, endurance, and your resistance to pain. If you take it too far, though, you'll practically become a senseless monster. But there are other practical uses. You can close your own wounds, preventing them from bleeding out. Some train their eyes rather than their whole body and use the mana to enhance their vision. Most hunters do this. Same can be done with all the other senses. It's just a matter of choosing what you want your body to be like. The wolf crosses his arms and then looks at me, probably inquiring if I understand all that he was saying. I nod back at that gesture, smiling. By the way, what is battle aura? I think Ruby used it on me when I first met her. Why do you think that? Well, one moment I was talking to her as usual, and the next, I was about to shit my pants. Call me crazy, but I don't believe that's normal. As I told my story, the wolf couldn't help but grin back at me. Well, that's basically it. Red eyes can project an intimidating feeling to the foes surrounding them. It's quite useful in battle, as it renders enemies useless. Although it doesn't work with everyone, only with the weak-minded individuals. Rodrick's grin returned to his face as he was clearly making fun of me for falling on Ruby's control, while at the same time proving his point about my mentality. In any case, there is one more thing that I want to show you. Really? What? Matthew! A young-looking soldier looked up at the mention of his name. The sword. The young man nodded and then threw one wooden sword at the wolf. Strength mana can be transmitted into small portions of other objects. Although it's extremely difficult to do so, and not many people can master such a skill. Now look at this tree. Without a second thought, Rodrick swung his sword into the tree trunk, but barely managed to leave a dent on the crust. This sword is not meant to slash and much less kill, correct? Yeah, I suppose so. That's why it's for training. Indeed. Rodrick took a deep breath and then looked at the tree again. For a second there, his eyes had a certain glint to them. But before I could comment on that, the wooden sword was halfway deep into the tree trunk. My mouth fell agape at the showcase of raw strength and power. It made me wonder if he could do this with a mere wooden sword, then how much damage could he do with a real one? He could probably chop the entire tree with a single swing. And that's the real potential of physical mana. If you imbue your weapon while at the same time enhancing your own abilities, well, you can see for yourself. It's incredible. For the first time, I saw Rodrick pleased with himself. Was he enjoying showing off to me? That's new. Captain! One of the soldiers that were training nearby approached us, immediately changing Rodrick's expression. We are done with the drills and exercises. We await new orders. Very well. Rodrick said as he turned to face me. Go find another place to nap, Runt. We'll speak later. And with that, the wolf left me alone as he walked towards the trainees. As the wolf walked away, I took a glance at the sword stuck in the tree. I would have never thought that something like this could be possible. The knight really was an impressive fella. So strong. So manly. So big. Then, as memories of Ascent came rushing back at me, I started to think about what other attributes could be enhanced. Before the tent in my pants was too noticeable, though, I took off and headed towards the bathroom. I needed a cold shower ASAP. Man, that took way longer than I expected, but I'm glad it's finally out. I mean, I really liked how it all turned out, even though it took me 1 month more than expected. Sorry about that. But how about you? You liking the story so far? I really hope so. Hee. We're getting to a point of no return in our character's life, so I hope that you're ready for that. Although, for now, you better enjoy the calm before the storm. See what I did there? Never mind, it was a terrible pun. Bad jokes aside, this update wouldn't have been possible to pull off without the help of a very talented friend of mine. Zet or Chet? If you're reading this, thanks a lot, man. I mean it. I suck at coding and you help me a lot. Also, big thanks to Kinu. He's been putting a lot of work to create the beautiful CGs and backgrounds that you've seen in the latest updates. You're the GOAT. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. Don't forget that I can continue working on this project thanks to my Patreon support. You guys are amazing. So if you like what you saw, feel free to support me there. Or, if you want, go tell me your opinion on either the VN Discord or my personal Twitter. I'm more than glad to read you all up, and you are more than welcome to become a part of our community. Also, a small reminder that I'm constantly uploading new juicy content and unique content on my Patreon, so maybe that is an even bigger incentive to support. In any case, I hope that you enjoyed. See you all in the next update. Bye-bye. And that was Rodrick's portion of the story. In case you only read Rodrick's content, there was some other stuff, the library for Ehlly and the market for Almond, where they each basically gave you the same explanation about their own magic. Almond being soul magic, Ehlly being I forgot what it was. I forgot what Ehlly magic is. It's not elemental, is it? I forget. I think it is elemental. But with Rodrick, we got to see how strength magic works, how he is able to not just imbue himself and his body with strength, but also things that he is, I guess, using, like a sword, for example. I'm wondering if it's possible to imbue another person with strength magic, like, for example, Ehlly. Because Ehlly himself right now doesn't have any magic, and I'm wondering if it's possible to pour a bit of that strength into Ehlly and have him be temporarily boosted, in a way. I mean, I don't suppose that that Rodrick would have to hold Ehlly like a sword and like swing him around, and then he would have an increased durability and stuff. That'd be hilarious. Impromptu sword. It's also interesting to note that the strength magic isn't just like, oh, I'm gonna make you stronger. No, you can use it to mend yourself temporarily. Like the closing of wounds and stuff like that. Basically increasing your body's resilience in a way. Anyways, there's also, of course, Prince Brandon, which is shared throughout the 3 recording/routes. Interesting to note that he wants to become king because he's been groomed for that this entire life, but at the same time, it looks like he isn't prepared according to the current king, and it's evident by the fact that he apparently does have like a little bit of a temper, but like like he has like his princely, his regal aura, and like the face that he's presenting to everyone else. But the moment that something isn't going right, it looks like it cracks and he like loses it a little. Which I guess is the reason why the king wants him to spend some time with Ehlly, to make sure that, you know, the mistakes are not being made. And that he can be a king of the people, not just of the royalty, of the people with money, the church or whatever. Like, that he's actually taking into consideration the lower class, I guess. Because he's been raised with a silver spoon in his mouth all this time, and, you know, you kind of forget that other people do not have the same opportunities that you have. So you have to think about everyone, not just yourself or the people around you. And it does make sense to have somebody that is not of your own social group or whatever be an advisor, because it does help to put things in perspective, because he would only be thinking of how he grew up and how things happened when he grew up, and he's not thinking about literally the reality of everyone else. So it does make sense to have Ehlly as an advisor, but it's a little weird. And then there is the princess who was being made to wed the cardinal, the creepy weirdo. And it does suck, but it is to be expected, at least for royalty. And you do still see it nowadays, where only the male heirs are ever thought of when you're thinking about the line of succession, and the female heirs are never thought of. There's just like, oh, I have a daughter, but like, hey, I'm trying to get her married to like this one dude over there who has a lot of money or who has a lot of connections, etc. Poor girl. Anyways, so what are your thoughts so far on the story? Write it down in the comments, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you'd like to play Heart of Amethyst yourself or stay up to date with, you know, whatever's going on with the story, then you can do so by going down into the link in the description, which will have a direct link for the itch.io page where you can download the game, or you can just go to itch.io yourself and download it there. And he, as Jaden mentioned, he does have a Patreon where you get early access to builds of Heart of Amethyst, and you also get to see some other content related to Heart of Amethyst, like some spicier content. I do know that he is planning something for the anniversary. We were talking about that recently, very recently, so, you know, you have that to look forward to also. But yeah, anyways, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.